And Roger had a couple quick things to say. Roger?
Yeah, thanks, Eva. I just want to, again, welcome everyone and thank you for joining us for this presentation on the use of life planning in large financial services companies. The Kinder Institute, I just wanted to say a few things about the Kinder Institute for those of you who may not be familiar with us. The Kinder Institute's been leading a movement for the last 10 years or so, attempting to fundamentally redefine the possibilities and the practice of financial advisory services. And we call this movement life planning because it involves discussing in a much deeper way what clients really want to get out of life, and then putting the financial architecture in place to deliver that. We've done our trainings, our life planning trainings on 4 continents, and we maintain a database of over 1,400 advisors who follow our work. I'm very pleased to be introducing George Kinder, who will be doing the presentation today. George is the founder of the Kinder Institute, and he was a tax and financial advisor for over 30 years and is widely recognized in the industry as the father of the life planning movement. George has received a number of awards in the industry and is the author of 3 books, most notably The 7 Stages of Money Maturity and then Lighting the Torch, the Kinder Method of Life Planning. So without further ado, George?
Thank you, Roger. Let's move on to the next slide because something came into my email this morning that's changed the talk. If we look here, it says throw away the script. Investment news, October 5th, 2009, McQuinney pushes city brokers into fee-based model. And in fact, if we read this further, it's really quite astonishing because they talk about, here's the first sentence. Citigroup said Monday that it is converting the brokers in its branch network to a fee-only investment advisory model from the traditional commission-based model it has used. Later on in the article, it talks about how this aligns ourselves with our clients. And then she talks again about how other banks have aligned themselves with a full commission brokerage firm. But we want an open model so we can align ourselves with some of the best independent advisors in the country. And it's not to say that Citi has got the right answer necessarily here, but what the point that we want to make from this is that there's a huge, huge movement that is just about to unfold, and Citi is going to cause kind of massive waves, a big tsunami, I think, as people realize that this is really possible for large companies to shift from a model where they are excuse me, I just had to change how I'm holding the phone here, where they are moving from a model which is commission-based, sales-oriented, product-oriented, to one that is genuinely client and consumer-oriented. This is where we are as life planners. Is we want to see. We believe that the consumer ultimately will win, and that the best business models are going to, in fact, deliver what it is that the consumer, what works best for the consumer. So here we go. The challenge right now, of course, is that we're moving from a time where the whole financial services industry, and in particular the big companies, are surviving with tattered reputations. There's uncertainty about the regulatory structures that are going to emerge, a lot of debate right now. There's a loss of market share that's been steady for many years to independent advisors. And there's also the cluttered marketplace. So how do we find clarity out of that? So that's really the challenge. And the opportunity is clear to all of us, I think. There's a huge demographic imperative, both with the baby boomers retiring and inheriting, also with there's this obviously a huge movement of just people becoming more financially savvy and wanting to run their finances really well and being more in charge of their finances. So there's a huge unmet need. There's a flight to quality and to stability right now coming out of coming out of this crisis? Who has that quality? How do we identify ourselves, and how does the consumer perceive us as having both that quality and that stability? Stability not merely in terms of size, but in terms of promise for the future. And finally, there's an opportunity in the possibility of differentiation. And here, once again, we think the real leaders in the financial services industry will be created now, basically in the next year or two, and they're going to be the ones that lead the consumer, and where the brand becomes clearly established, that they care the most and they deliver the most to the client. So in regard to this, the question is, what is life planning? And we'll spend much of this hour looking at that. But in brief, to the client, life planning it's so easy, it's so at ease that it hardly exists. What it is to the client is that it's the art of conversation. The client enters the advisor's office and feels so comfortable and so at ease because of the art of conversation that happens there, and then the client becomes truly and profoundly inspired because the conversation leads to what it is that the client has always wanted to accomplish or to achieve, and most often has never shared with a financial advisor, often has never shared even with a close friend. Now, to the business, it's not an art at all, it's really a science. To the business, it's a highly structured, client-centered interview process with measurable deliverables at every stage of the process. Now, back to the client for a moment. For the client, the client gets delivered what they really want out of life, and what an astonishing thing to base a business on. We think of it, as we watch clients come through these processes, we think of it as freedom for clients. To the business, what happens is that in accomplishing this with a highly structured process, that process is trainable, it's repeatable, it's scalable to the size of the client and to the nature of the business entity and purposes. So it's actually a highly profitable and valuable process to the business. And we'll, again, look in much greater detail at what it means to the business toward the end of this conversation. The next slide, what life planning delivers to the client, again, much greater satisfaction in life. We call it what the client really wants. To the business, again, the greater success in reputation and brand, much greater efficiency and profitability occurs. Much higher business valuations come from doing life planning, from shifting from a sales-oriented firm to a service-oriented firm. A secure and stable client base. And finally, rapid growth. And again, we'll show how all of these things come about in the course of this webinar. Even now, and even before the advent of life planning, there's been a changing role of advisors that has been perceived probably most clearly by the financial planning community, but I think it's really by all advisors, because it's driven not only by who the advisor is and how they conduct the meeting, but also by who the clients are and what they expect as societal shifts and changes occur. This is a study. These first two slides I'm going to show you are a study from the Journal of Financial Planning just a couple of months ago by Sussman and Brodzik. Here's a quote: "Only 75% of the work financial planners perform for clients involves financial issues. The other 25% of the work involves dealing with non-financial issues, human drama, and frailties." So already 25% of the work. And these are not life planners speaking, these are financial planners speaking. This was a survey sent out to, I think it was 36,000 advisors, of whom I think a couple thousand responded. Changing role of advisors, again, 74% of advisors have experienced a session in which a client became emotionally distraught. So this is just happening naturally this is not with life planning, this is just happening in every advisor's office. 58% of advisors have been told a non-financial secret that no other person knows. 48% have mediated marital discord. 10% even have had discussions with clients about suicide. So these are obviously very personal issues, and one of the reasons that life planning actually developed among the certified financial planning community in America is that these kinds of conversations were occurring, and the advisors, the planners, had no idea what to do with them, how to frame them, or to process them. We're now a good 10 or 15 years into that conversation that life planning began, and the procedures, the processes, the structures, and the forms are really quite well established. We know what to do, and we know how to do it. One of the things that we've been talking about in the life planning movement is about how our traditional conversations with the clients are filled with painful possibilities that we really never address in the textbooks, never address in our trainings, and it's become clear, I think, that it's time to address them. Death, estate planning, obviously, disability. We sell disability insurance, unemployment, divorce, natural disasters, theft, betrayal, inheritance inequities, fraud, and investment losses. And indeed, if you think about just the last one, the investment losses over the last 12 months, it should be very clear that one of the major impetuses in this moment toward life planning amongst firms really all over the world are these conversations that our advisors have had, the emotion-laden conversations. And once again, how do we deal with them? We're used to dealing with them just with a knowledge base, but in fact, emotional skill sets, the capacity to listen well, all of these things help tremendously in terms of securing a client base. But life planning is much more than this, because in addition to training advisors how to listen well, how to be thoughtful, how to be empathic, it delivers something extraordinary to the client in that it delivers what it is that the client most aspires to. So if we look at some of the key life planning skills, these are sometimes counterintuitive, but we ask and then pause. So there's actually a lot of pauses in a conversation with a client. The meetings are the client's meetings, not our meetings primarily. Very different perspective. We listen and we don't solve. In fact, I'd say that probably 90% of the energy to solve the problems that the client comes in with will come from the client. And if you find yourself working harder than the client, you've got a problem in your office. And it's partly a problem of delivery, of how you're delivering your services. We empathize rather than shutting down. So those are the three. The first three are really exercises with listening and with feelings, emotions in the room. But the last two are in some ways what we're really known for. And these are endorse, don't judge, inspire, don't squelch. And here what happens is that we really deliver, we look for what it is that would most inspire the client from all the things that they've shared with us, from the goal exercises we do, and then we really work to inspire them to accomplish those things. The process that we use, the structured methodology for the client engagement, I think of it as a structured client interview process, has 5 phases to it. Now, these 5 phases, if you're working with a middle-income client or even a working-class client, these would happen in an hour. Each of these might take 10 minutes apiece. If it's a more traditional client, then each of these might be a separate meeting. The 5 phases are exploration, vision, obstacles, knowledge, and execution. They read out to EVOKE as an acronym. And what they are, just very briefly, the exploration is the place where we really listen. We really, that first meeting, we hardly ask anything of the client other than why they're there. And we set up the meeting so that the client gets more and more excited and interested in and feeling comfortable with just sharing what it is that is really important to them in their life, certainly around their finances, but in their life in general. And so we begin to hear things that from clients that they've never shared with an advisor before and possibly never shared with anybody before. In the second meeting, the vision meeting, that's where we look for those sparks of inspiration. And we have very particular goal exercises that we work with, and I'm going to share one of them with you in a moment, to really inspire the client to identify what it is that they care most about. And those are the things that we want to make sure that we deliver. So we call this life planning as opposed to financial planning because we are really delivering these lives, these authentic lives that clients want to live. And the purpose of the reason that it only happens with us is that there's a financial architecture for everyone that needs to be in place to live their dreams. The third meeting, or the third phase in a single meeting sometimes, is called obstacles, and that's where we bring up the obvious things, the large amount of debt that they might have, the internal obstacles that the client might have to actually accomplishing what they want to accomplish. You know, all the financial stuff that's sticky might come out there. But I say that we bring them up, but in fact, once again, the way we structure these meetings is that they're all the client's meetings. So we would, rather than playing this almost patriarchal role of saying how, well, isn't this an obstacle to someone, and judgmental role, we ask the client what it is that they see as obstacles. And at least 9 out of 10 of the obstacles you're expecting will be delivered to you. Often, most of the time, all of the obstacles you're expecting the client knows about and begins to talk about. What happened in the vision meeting was that actually the client gets so inspired that they have the energy to solve the obstacles. The knowledge meeting is really about the financial plan, and execution is clearly the executing of that plan. Those are elements that are already, that we don't change much. And the only change that occurs for life planners in those two elements is that it's much easier to design the financial plan because you know where you're going, and you're so clear about it, and the client is so clear about it, and there's not a lot of backing and filling with the client. And the execution really happens. The client buys the insurance, fulfills the funding of the estate plan, the execution of the estate plan, the signing of it. It all happens because you really link to who the client is and what they care most about. Now, how we do that, we've got a series of goal exercises. One of them is called Ideal Day, Ideal Week, Ideal Year, and we play with that image of what the client would really what would really jazz them, what would excite them the most. But the exercise we're most famous for is something called the 3 questions. So I'm just going to read these questions so you get a feeling for how they work. And we ask them sequentially of a client to fill them out. Usually this is homework that they do at home, possibly for the very first meeting. And they have to go one question at a time and in sequential order. So the first question is very simply for you to imagine that you have enough money to take care of your needs now and in the future. And if that were the case, how would you live your life? Would you change anything? Don't hold back on your dreams. So you can see that question plays with all of our material aspirations, and really lots of stuff comes out. And it's very exciting to see and share the vision of who the client really wants to become. All the fun things are there. Second question, we take the client a bit deeper. This time you visit your doctor who tells you that you have only 5 to 10 years left to live. What will you do in the time you have remaining? So how will you live your life? What will be different about it? And again, you can see that here the client gets considerably more reflective. And the deeper stuff comes up, and some of the more superficial answers to the first question fall away. And this is really what we want. We want to take the client as deeply as they're willing willing to go. And they're not willing to go there without having the exploration meeting first and without having that first question, the kind of win the lottery dream question first. But by the time we get to the third question, they're really ready to connect with us around what's important to them. And this time, we ask them, your doctor shocks you with the news that you have only one day left to live. So ask yourself, really reflecting on all the things you've done or not gotten to do yet, all the things you've been and not gotten to be, all the dreams that you've had. What did I miss? Who did I not get to be? What did I not get to do? And you can see how personal and how deep that question is. And what happens is that for virtually everybody, it hits bedrock. It gets to the place where the client is honest with themselves, honest with their spouse, if their spouse is there, and honest with the advisor about what they care about most, what's absolutely critical for them to accomplish, to have, and to be. And it's typically, not always, but I'd say certainly 70 to 90% of the time, it's typically in the answer to this third question that the essence of the financial plan and the relationship between the advisor and the client is born. The financial plan, if we address these questions, yes, of course we're going to deal with the retirement plan, with the estate plan, with insurance needs, and all of the rest. But it's going to be fastened to what the client cares about most, not just superficial responses. So there's a moment there that we call, at the end of that third question, that we call lighting the torch. It's actually the title of my second book, which is a description of the structured client interview process, just interview by interview. We also, our 5-day training is the same process, interview by interview, but this is a guidebook to it. And that moment of lighting the torch in the vision phase of Evoke is a moment where the client may be very moved by that third question. Again, remember the depth of that third question. What happens is that we ask the client, we really hand to the client at that moment a vision for them of what would inspire them the most, what would be most exciting, and ask them if that we were to deliver that as part of our work with them, even as the centerpiece of our work with them in the financial planning process. If we were to deliver that, how would that be? And what happens, we call it lighting the torch because it's a moment where the client gets so excited or so moved, so vitalized that you see palpably in the client this affect of energy, of vitality, of excitement, of happiness, of enthusiasm, of optimism. And it's at that moment that you know that you've landed not only the client, you've landed the plan, you've got a client really for life if you can deliver on the financial architecture, which is, of course, what we're most skilled at. So it's an extraordinary moment, and it's extraordinary for the advisor. It gets the advisor excited as much as the client. So the advisor, the life of the advisor becomes a much more energized and vitalized life as well. So let's see, I'm going in the wrong direction here. Here we go, lighting the torch. So the three questions, what happens there, you're going probably as an audience listening to this talk, you're going, well gosh, that third question doesn't have anything to do with money. And we'll acknowledge that that's how it looks at the get-go, at the beginning. This simple approach, as it says, catalyzes a remarkable process of discovery. And there are really 5 goals, 5 foundational goals, we call them, that come up more than anything else in that third question. The first one, the one that comes up more than any other, is family and relationship. But very close behind, actually, is not creative passion, but spirit and values. And that could be anything from something explicitly spiritual to something very, very secular, but values laden. The third most common response is creativity, is a creative passion that the client really cares about. It might be write the great science fiction novel of the 21st century or do a film. These are things that normally we leave out of our planning process, and much to our cost, because it means that we never connect with who the client really is and what it is that they really most want to accomplish, what it is that they most want to do. The final two are actually far down the list. They're still in the top 5. We expect the community one because that's what we're trained in our philanthropic segments of estate planning. And a sense of place is really could be about the environment, or it could be about where you live and where you want to live. So these things sound as if they're not financial, but the truth is that each one of these requires time. And if we go back to Ben Franklin's, Poor Richard's Almanac, we remember that time is money. And so often what we're doing is buying the client's time to make these things happen. When we do that, as I say, when we make them that offer, and they become so moved and so excited that, in fact, they really can do this thing. They can heal the family relationships, or they can have the time with the family that they care about as the children grow up before they've flown the coop. They can spend time with them. They can have time to dedicate to their spiritual values or their creativity. This is extraordinary for the client, and it has extraordinary results as a consequence for the business of financial planning, the business of financial advice, the business side of it. So if we move on to the next slide, this is, again, from that same study. This is the changing role of advisors. The question was, the discussion of personal, non-financial issues with my clients improves my ability to do a good job. And 89% of the advisors agreed, only 11% disagreed. So really pretty clear there what happens. And just as an example, we asked one of our registered life planners. This is we have the only real designation in life planning. So one of our registered life planners gave us 2 client case studies coming from a couple of clients that he shifted from a traditional financial advisory approach to a life planning approach. And you can see here in client case study number 1, there was already a 2-year relationship, only $85,000 in their portfolio, an annual meeting, total generated revenue for this person of just $425, hardly worth doing for most of our firms. Afterwards, however, after they started life planning, they started it at an annual review, and the portfolio went up to $615,000 portfolio, 3 meetings annually, so it took a little bit more time, but not much, and $7,000 fee revenue, as well as 2 client referrals. Really astonishing transformation. The second case study is nearly as astonishing. Again, a 2-year relationship, $300,000 portfolio, 2 annual meetings, and a total generated revenue of $1,500. Again, not just a pittance, really. Afterwards, the client, after they started life planning, they started again at an annual review, and they brought in $3.4 million portfolio. Again, the trust level is so high from this process that you get the large portfolios delivered. 100% of assets come in. 3 meetings annually, so just a slight additional amount of time involved, and yet you've got more than 10 times the fee revenue, and you get 3 client referrals as well shortly after the life planning process began. So just the astonishment in the clients is well worth noting, and the consequences to an advisor's business as well. But we have other studies. For instance, Prince and Associates in 2005 did a study of what they called lifestyle advisors, very close to a life planner, and how they do better. And one of the things, there are 3 things here. One of them is that 66% got more assets, and that they were 2.5 times more likely to get more assets being a lifestyle advisor than being a traditional advisor. That 57% of the lifestyle advisors added products and services, meaning that they had more things to talk about, more things to work on, more products to deliver. So that was 5 times more likely than the traditional advisors, and they got 4 times as many referrals. Again, referrals really explode in this process because the client is so astonished and so pleased with what is delivered for their lives. So the business case for this, we've actually seen much more than this, and this is we're seeing this is to some extent anecdotal, but we're seeing it over and over and over again. One of the things is greater retention, fewer sales. As we talked about the emotion-laden conversations that people have had in their offices over the last year, these are conversations that certainly you can deal with on an intellectual level, but to have the emotional touch, the presence, the empathy, the listening skills, clients respond to that. And with greater retention of clients, the real business news is that there's fewer sales that are required. Or you could go out and get more sales and deliver that much more business for the firm. In any case, you can see a tremendous efficiency here with greater retention and fewer sales. The next piece, we've got higher percentage of assets under management. And again, the kind of the traditional, you go all the way back to the commission-oriented firms, and traditionally they would have 35 to 45% of assets under management. And with life planning, you typically get much closer to 100% of assets under management. Higher closing ratios. What I'm hearing over and over again is closing ratios somewhere between 4 out of 5 and 5 out of 5. I know that at the end of my career as an active financial advisor, my closing ratio was virtually 100%. But what I'm hearing from people who are just beginning this is leaping up to 80, 85% just about right away, just from shifting that first meeting to a listening meeting rather than a presentation meeting. The next piece is referrals after the first meeting. That actually should read after the very first meeting. That's one of the astonishing things people are telling us, is that you have that first meeting and people are suddenly referring clients to you. What a wonderful thing, just because as an advisor you listened and you really are showing that you cared. This next piece is tremendously important for big businesses, but for any business really, and that is that that this work, because it's a structured interview process that you're delivering, it's transferable. It's trainable. Those are extraordinary things. So it's not like you just leave your business and someone comes in and you hope they have similar skill sets, or you can actually train people in this. That's what we do, and train them so that they're terrific at it, and so that they deliver. They light the torch for the clients. It's also scalable, which is lovely in many ways. It's scalable in a variety of ways. One is we train advisors who want to work with middle income and working class clients to do the interview in an hour or less. In fact, to light the torch in 10 or 15 minutes. On the other hand, if you're working with more well-to-do clients, you take the time that feels right and feels necessary. So it might be a meeting apiece for each of those 5 phases of Evoke. But it's also scalable in terms of a large firm, of the firm itself, because there are ways of introducing this material to the staff and to various people who are not directly working with the clients. That is less expensive, shorter in time span, and so it's scalable in that way within the whole organization as well. It's also saleable. And bringing that to the next bullet point, there's a famous study that Mark Tabergen has done. He's done, I think, probably a series of studies on the value of of financial firms, and he has looked primarily at the difference between a commission-only firm and all the layers of fees, from the fee-based up to the fee-only kind of firm. And those studies have generally shown that the value of a fee-only firm is 3 to 4 times the value of a commission-only firm. That certainly will be one of the reasons why Deborah McWhinney is taking Citi in that direction as rapidly as she can. we figure if it's 3 to 4 times for a fee-only firm, it's got to be another multiple higher, 4 to 5 times, for a firm that has life planning. Because one of the points that Brodzik makes is that the reason for the higher valuations is the higher quality of trust that the client feels. And there's no higher quality of trust. There's no more committed client base than you're going to find with a life planning-based firm. And the final piece, of course, is the energized client and the re-energized advisor. Right at this point, we need both of those with the devastations that have occurred in the financial services industry and how the advisors feel, but also how devastated the clients feel. So life planning does this. It energizes the client and re-energizes the advisor, building a very strong base for the business. So if I look at then what the program is, how would you actually do this? These are the 3 elements of what we call the registered life planner curriculum. And you can see there's a 2-day workshop that's at the bottom on the left called The 7 Stages of Money Maturity. That was my first book that I wrote. And then there's a 5-day training, and then there's a 6-month mentorship that puts the cap on it all and delivers the Registered Life Planner designation. And this is a designation that now is on 4 continents, I think. We list actually advisors on 6 continents. But these programs are very different, and they're very interesting, and they lead into each other. The first program actually is the program that teaches and trains the listening skills, the empathic skills. It gives the bulk of the goal exercises that we train advisors in, how to do them and what they are. So it trains the advisors also in inspiration. But it also, as implied in the title, The 7 Stages of Money Maturity, gives a model of how to think about who our clients are and where they are in their relationship to money and what kinds of issues might come up for them. And so it makes it easier to do that listening to them and to convey that empathy when they're struggling about something financial. But it also, at the end of that 2-day, we begin the introduction to the structured interview process we call Evoke. And that's really what the second workshop, the 5-day advanced training workshop, is all about. And that's really the one where you learn that structured interview process, you practice it over 5 days. It's an extraordinary workshop. The first workshop, 7 stages, could have as many as 100 people in it. The 5-day workshop, we limit to 12 or 14 advisors. And the methodology that is taught there, how it's taught, is quite extraordinary, because we typically have anywhere from 2 to 3, 4, even 5 occasionally teachers to the 12 to 14 advisors that are coming in to learn. And so the teacher-student ratio is very high. And what happens is that each advisor pairs up with someone that they don't know, and another advisor, and they life plan each other. And so at the end of that workshop, the planners have life planned, have experienced life planning by being life planned themselves. So their life plans become alive. They become inspired to live the life that they've always longed to live. But they've learned it from the inside, but they've also practiced it on another person and watched typically 12 other people practice it on each other. So the group leaves as an inspired, I think of it as a high-performance team, having engaged in these 3 different kinds of learning, of being coached, of doing it themselves, and of having it done on them. One of the things we say is to be a great life planner, you have to live your life plan. This is a process that has really the ultimate in integrity to it, and that's something, again, that the client really feels. Briefly, the final piece of the curriculum is a 6-month online mentorship. Many people say that this is the capstone. It's really the best of the bunch, but it's not experiential the way the first 2 are. It's a 6-month online case study seminar approach to life planning. So you have people bringing in live, real case studies. You bring in your own, and having others in this community reflect back again that on the case. So it's a tremendous learning experience because you have 12 or 14 responses to the case that you present. So many new ideas, exciting new ideas come up, and great learning over a 6-month time, really embedding the practice in the advisor. Final slide here for the day, and then I want to open to questions and have some time with you. This really involves a profound change in culture to do this, and we recognize that. That's something, again, that we led with the Citigroup slide because clearly they've understood that, and they're taking that on, and they're making that change happen. There will be many firms that aren't able to do it or don't want to do it or feel that they want to just come back to what they think is core. Our work is with whatever firms out there want to, in fact, have greater relationships with their clients, and we can do this in a scalable way that involves structured processes that are implemented throughout their advisory community. But it takes a real commitment to do it, and a building of that commitment. And there are a variety of ways of doing it. Some firms might want to come and just go through the whole community, but other firms are going to want, as more typical, to take some pioneers in the community, but a number of them, enough of them that there's a real group sense of development. The elite of the community, sometimes it certainly develops into the elite of the community. And then those community leaders inspire the other advisors in the firm. So there's a variety of ways, whether you bring in hundreds at once or you bring in a few dozen at once. How do you build the excitement and the commitment? And one of the great things that the larger firms have is that they have unique capabilities that the small independent advisors don't have, and that is that you can train many advisors at once, whereas a small firm, a one-person firm, a three-person firm, you're only going to be training 1, 2, or 3 people at once. Also, once again, you can do it in a way that's scalable, thoughtfully scalable to the needs of the community. So I think with all of that said, maybe I'll put the programs back up so you can see those, because that's what we really do best. We do other things as well, but this is the essence of what we do. I'd love to find out from all of you what questions you have, what concerns, what interests, where you'd like me to go further with the time we have allotted here. And maybe Eva and Roger, maybe that you've actually seen some questions come in.
Yeah, George, I'm going to try it a couple different ways. Liliana has a question for us, and Liliana, if you can hear me, I just attempted to unmute your line. So if you can ask your question, let us know, say something so we can find out if we can hear you. Yeah, just as I suspected, she's probably just listening to the computer, so of course we can't hear her. That's kind of silly. So George, if you don't mind, I'll read you the question that Liliana had. The question is, don't take it personally. I think she thinks you're old and wise, perhaps, reading into this question, but she says, George, do you believe that the reason for the deeper level of trust has to do with the age of the advisor? For instance, you know, an older advisor may have more life experience, therefore a client might be more willing or comfortable to share their life experience and desire, and then she kind of follows up with, you know, what would you say the average age of a life planner is?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are so many extraordinary examples of great life planners in their 30s that I would not hold Liliana's assumption, but I would honor some of the some of what it is that she's suggesting in her question. One of the reasons that I think we're seeing really terrific planners in their 30s doing this is that the culture's changed over the last 30 or 40 years. More people people have been more accustomed to both coaching or counseling around a divorce that might have happened, and kids have grown up feeling comfortable in that milieu. So I don't think it's either confined or largely going to be a movement for people in their 50s. In fact, 50s or older. In fact, the last 5-day that I gave in Europe, I think the predominant number of people were in their 30s. So, but I will say this, that it is something that involves a quality that we might call wisdom. That in fact, and that as people get better and better at it, I think there's a wisdom aspect to it, and that there's no doubt that is improved and increased with practice and with experience.
Great, George. Thank you. We also have a question here from Bill, and Bill's wondering if there's a sample course in life planning he can take. He certainly would love to go through the entire registered life planner process, and he'd love for his firm to be able to pay for it, but he's just wondering how he might be able to sample things.
Oh, terrific. Well, actually, I think you're probably the best person to answer. Eva is the one that really engages in most conversations about coming to the 2-day training, and it's really the 2-day training that would be the course that I would strongly and highly recommend to begin. And it is a sample, but you'll learn a tremendous amount. Everybody leaves that course with a much greater capacity for listening and connecting with the clients, and also much greater capacity to inspire and work with the goals that the clients really want to accomplish. Eva, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, that's great, George. Thanks. A couple things. Nadine, who's just such a wizard and intuitively knew to pull up some of the trainings, and Bill, you can see that often there are maybe certain conference specials or different maybe discounts you might get in on. So you're seeing on your screen right now a couple of them coming up. And also somebody else asked a question, when and where are these? So we're kind of answering a couple things here. So George is right. You would start with the 2-day and see how that felt. The other thing, of course, that I would suggest to anyone who wants to kind of really get a better grasp before they even dip their toe in to go to the 2-day is I would always suggest either one of George Kinder's books. The first one, of course, he's already mentioned, 7 Stages of Money Maturity. In many ways, that could help you kind of prepare for the 2-day workshop or have a better understanding of it walking in. And then, of course, George's second book, Evoke, which is Lighting the Torch, which is really about the evoke process that we're talking about. So certainly a good way to start if you're waiting before one of those dates come up to be able to take one of those 2-day workshops.
Eva, I wonder one more question that might pop up as I'm looking at the list. I know that the only public workshops that we have listed right now, only one of them is in the States, and that's happening in a few days, and the other 2 are in London. When are the next workshops happening in the States that we're planning? Do we have firm dates on them, or do we have approximate dates for them?
Roger, Mary Ellen, one of you jump in on? I'm always hesitant to kind of give out dates when we don't know for sure, because I don't want somebody to necessarily count on it.
Okay.
Eva, I think we're looking at mid-January.
Mid-January, and then I know there's one in March as well that we're looking at in the Boston area.
Mid-January would be in the Southwest, most likely.
Okay.
Probably,
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so watch the site. Those will be, I'm sure that those will be listed within the next few weeks. Would be my bet, unless I'm speaking out of school. Roger and Eva, I think it's a good chance they will be. And you can always call Eva as well. Any other questions?
Well, George, I'm not seeing any more typed, although Nadine, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm always not the best at technology here, but I'm not really necessarily seeing other questions. But certainly as this, you begin to kind of think about what George talked about today and some of it begins to resonate, oftentimes you might come up with a question. So I certainly want everyone to be aware. Nadine, if you could be so kind as to go to the contact page of our website as well at this point. So feel free. This is just the beginning of the conversation, I think, with many of you, and we're here to have those conversations continue and answer any questions that you have.
I will say that in the initial sign-up, there were a number of questions that came through, and the main one that came up several times was how to implement this practice. And the main thing I think that I would say to that, I mean, of course, please feel free to call Roger or Eva to talk with them about this as well. But the main thing I think is really getting an understanding of how that structured interview process works. Because once you see how it works, then the implementation issues become much simpler and much easier to understand. Having to do with charging and closing and all the different practice management questions that come up. But the first thing is really to get the structured interview process down.
We do have another question.
Great.
Mady has asked whether she can use the 3 questions in her practice now without being a registered life planner.
Now, Mady, it strikes me. I think that Mady has taken the 2-day, but I'm not sure. And if that's the case, there's no problem at all. There's a special site segment that is set up on our website to use the questions. And so you could actually download them from that site if you've taken the 2-day. If you haven't taken the 2-day, I'd say send us an email, and we'll send something back to you in regard to what we would want in terms of acknowledgments if you were to use the 3 questions. I think we want everybody to use, actually, if it's just the question of can you use the 3 questions, yes. Please acknowledge us and acknowledge the copyright in so doing. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'm going to assume then that we're done, and please feel free to call us at Kinder Institute or to email us if you have anything else that you want to ask us personally. It's been great talking with you all today, and I hope I'll see you at a workshop coming up soon. Thanks so much.